I live in a small blue house on Maple Street in Denver, America. It isn't large, barely 2 bedrooms, and a kitchen that always smells faintly of coffee, no matter how often I clean it, but it's mine. The house has one oak tree standing stubbornly in the front yard. Its roots have cracked the sidewalk in 2 places, but I never think of repairing it. That oak feels older and wiser than me, and I respect its claim. There are 2 shallow steps that lead up to my porch, both a little uneven, and a white railing that could use fresh paint. The door itself sticks when it rains, so every stormy evening I brace myself before yanking it open. Still, I love this house. It is steady, it is quiet, and for the first time in my adult life, it belongs to me. My name is Melissa, and I am 32 years old. I work from home for a design firm based out of Chicago, though I rarely make the trip there anymore. Remote work has become my rhythm. Most mornings, I shuffle into the kitchen, make coffee in the French press I bought secondhand for $20, and open my laptop at the dining table that doubles as my office desk. My days pass in gentle routines, checking emails, sketching logos, fixing layouts, sending files. At night, I sometimes sit on the porch and listen to the city hum. It is not glamorous, but it is mine, and after years of stretching myself thin for others, the simplicity feels like survival. My sister, Kayla, lives differently. She and her husband, Mark, own, or at least say they own, a tall brown house outside Boston. It has white trim, a chimney that looks picturesque in the snow, and a furnace that clatters like an old train whenever it turns on. Kayla fills the house with decorations she buys on sale: wreaths, candles, garlands, anything to make it look more polished than it is. They have 2 children, Lily, who is 8, and James, who is 5. Both are sharp and loud, with eyes that watch everything. I love them dearly, though I sometimes wonder if they will grow up believing, like their parents, that debts can always be absorbed by someone else. Our parents live in Ohio, in a pale yellow house they have had for 30 years. Deborah, my mother, spends her mornings watching the news with a volume too high, and Robert, my father, reads the paper but mostly just complains about the state of the world. They mean well, but they also meddle too much. They believe family duty trumps everything else, and for years I listened. For years I bent. Until one Thanksgiving when bending broke me. It began 2 years earlier, almost without thought. Kayla called one night, her voice trembling but polished. "We're short this month," she said. "Just $300, Melissa. We'll pay you back by January." I wired the money within an hour. It felt good, like being useful. The next month it was $400. Then it was the full mortgage. $1,200 at first, then $1,400 when their escrow was adjusted. I kept paying because I told myself it was love. I told myself family meant stepping in. I told myself it was temporary. But temporary stretched into habit, and habit became expectation. After a year, Kayla no longer asked politely. She sent me her bank information on the 28th of each month with a cheerful text. "Thanks, sis. You're saving us again." My savings dwindled. The emergency fund I had carefully built shrank to a shadow of itself. I stopped traveling, stopped buying new clothes, stopped going out with friends unless the bill was split to the cent. I pretended I didn't mind. "It's for family," I'd say, brushing off questions. But every time I clicked transfer, a knot grew tighter in my chest. By the second year, I sometimes joked that their house had my name carved into its bricks. I had paid almost $28,000 by then, enough to have bought myself a new car or a year of rent somewhere closer to my job. Instead, the money disappeared into Kayla's mortgage. I visited Boston twice, and each time I stood in their kitchen, watching Mark pour wine and Kayla laugh with her friends, and I wondered if they remembered whose dollars kept the furnace running. I wondered if they would ever stop asking. When autumn came again, I told myself I deserved something simple, something for me. I planned a Thanksgiving visit, not for obligation, but for family. I booked a flight from Denver to Boston for $380. I set aside another $300 for pie, gifts, and a rental car, so I could escape if the house felt too loud. I imagined it in soft colors, a quiet dinner, a walk through cold air, laughter around a table without sharp edges. I thought maybe, just maybe, this year would be peaceful. But peace is fragile. Looking back, maybe I should have known better. Family debts don't disappear just because the calendar says holiday. Still, at that time, I held on to hope. I pictured us all together. My parents driving in from Ohio, Kayla's kids tugging at my sweater, Mark carving the turkey with a grin. I wanted the story we told ourselves about being close, even if the truth underneath was messy. I wanted to sit in the warm lamplight of their Boston house and feel like I belonged at the table, not like I was paying rent on a life I didn't live. I remember the week before the trip, walking around my Denver house with a notebook. I calculated my budget with care. Groceries $60, gas $40, flight $380, Thanksgiving gifts $150, car rental $150, and one small indulgence, an apple pie from a bakery downtown that cost $25 but tasted like home. My bank balance was thinner than it should have been, but I convinced myself it was fine. I would make it work. After all, what's another month of stretching if it means family? That night, I stood at my porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the oaks sway against the dark sky. The air was sharp and thin the way it always is in Denver in November. I told myself, this time will be different. I didn't know yet that a single phone call would snap that illusion in two. I didn't know yet that my parents would choose sides, or that I would finally refuse. All I knew then was hope, fragile and stubborn as my oak tree, clinging to roots even when the wind blew hard. 1 week before the trip, I was sitting at my kitchen table in Denver, sipping reheated coffee and scrolling through emails, when the phone rang. The screen lit up with Kayla's name. I hesitated before answering because her calls often came with strings attached, but it was close to Thanksgiving, and I wanted to believe this one would be different. I pressed accept. Her voice was bright, cheerful, almost, but hard at the edges, the way glass shines before it cuts. So, she said quickly, about Thanksgiving. We need you to help with the kids. I frowned. Lily and James? Not just them, she replied, almost too casually. Mark's boss is coming, and he's bringing his 2 girls. The neighbors across the street are bringing their boys, and that couple from New York, you remember Emma and Daniel? They're bringing their twins. Everyone's bringing children. You're great with kids, Melissa. You can stay in the den and keep them busy. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. In the den? All day. Yes, she said, as if she were offering me an honor. You'll be the hero who keeps the chaos under control. You're so good at reading stories and playing those little games. We can set up a table with crayons. It'll be perfect. I felt my jaw tighten. So, you're saying I'm not invited to the table? You can eat later, Kayla said, her tone shifting, firming. It'll really help us. You know how much we have going on. Hosting is stressful, and this would take such a load off. I stared at the wall in front of me. The paint chipped slightly near the window frame. A knot formed in my stomach. I had spent nearly $400 on a ticket, and now she was asking me to trade my seat at the family table for a babysitting shift in the den. Kayla, I said slowly, I bought this ticket to see family. To be with you, not to run a daycare. She sighed, and then her voice sharpened. If you won't babysit, don't even come. The words landed like a slap. For a second, I couldn't speak. I had bent so often for her requests, for her needs, for her emergencies, but this felt different. This wasn't a request, it was a command. Before I could answer, I heard clattering in the background, pots and pans, someone moving briskly around the kitchen. Kayla's voice dropped for a moment, muffled, and then Mark's voice chimed in. Put her on speaker. A click, and now both of them were there. Mark spoke with the bluntness of someone who knew he had the upper hand. Melissa, it's just kids. Don't make a big deal. Kayla and I have worked hard to put this dinner together. You should help, not complain. My grip on the phone tightened. I'm not complaining. I'm saying I want to sit with my family, not spend the day locked in a room while you play host. They didn't answer right away. Instead, my phone buzzed with another incoming call. It was my parents. I felt a chill. I knew instantly that Kayla had already called them, framing the story in her favor before I had a chance to speak. Against my better judgment, I answered. My father's voice came first, stern and heavy, the way it had always been when he thought authority would fix everything. "Melissa, you have to obey your sister. She's hosting. Don't be selfish." I blinked at the word, obey. It sliced deeper than I expected. Obey? I'm 32, not 12. Since when does Kayla give me orders? My mother chimed in, her tone softer but still sharp. "It's just one day, honey. Do what she wants and don't start trouble. You know how stressed she gets. You can keep the kids happy and everyone will thank you for it." Their voices layered over each other, pushing, pressing. I felt the walls of my little Denver house lean in. The oak tree outside the window stood solid, but inside, I felt cornered. A line that had been stretched tight for years finally snapped. I raised my voice, shaking with fury and hurt. "Then pay for your own Thanksgiving vacation," I fired back. "Because I'm canceling every single plan with her family. And I'm done paying your mortgage." The silence that followed was thick, almost alive. I imagined them all, standing in their kitchen outside Boston, my parents on speakerphone from Ohio, stunned that I had dared to break the script. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice low and incredulous. "You can't be serious." "I'm serious," I said. My throat was tight, but my voice did not waver. "Starting today." No one spoke after that. The call ended, not with resolution, but with a heavy, final click. I sat in my kitchen, phone on the table, staring at the steam curling out of my half-empty mug. My hands were trembling, not just from anger, but from release. For years, I had told myself that helping was love, that giving was family. I had covered their debts, silenced my protests, swallowed my needs. But at that moment, with one outburst, I had cracked the pattern wide open. I stood up and walked through my little blue house, my feet on the familiar creaks of the floorboards. I touched the back of the sofa, the corner of the table, and the handle of the door that stuck when it rained. All of it was mine. I wasn't obeying anyone here. Yet even as I breathed in the quiet of my own space, I felt the weight of what I had just done pressing against me. Thanksgiving was a week away. My parents were furious, my sister was livid, and my brother-in-law was in disbelief. I had drawn a line, but I knew the storm was only beginning. Still, deep in my chest, beneath the fear, a seed of relief began to grow. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I had said no. The morning after the call, I woke before the alarm. My body felt heavy, as though I had carried weights in my sleep. The light in Denver was pale, the kind that slips softly through blinds in late November. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, and felt something sharp and clear move through me. I was finished. The decision had already been made. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself coffee, and opened my laptop. My flight confirmation email sat there, waiting like a guilty note. My fingers hovered, but only for a second. I clicked cancel reservation. A message popped up. Refund will be processed, less a $90 cancellation fee. I clicked confirm without hesitation. Watching the screen blink back to the homepage, I felt a strange mix of grief and freedom. $90 lost, but a whole burden lifted. Next, I pulled up my bank account. There it was again, the automatic payment scheduled for the 28th of the month. $1,200 to Kayla and Mark's mortgage. For 2 years, I had let it drain from my account like clockwork, no questions asked. With 3 clicks, I deleted the payment. It took less than 10 seconds to undo 2 years of sacrifice. I stared at the blank space where their payment used to sit, and something inside me unclenched. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Kayla had noticed. She sent long texts, paragraphs spilling down the screen. Words like betrayal and selfish, and you don't understand how hard it is for us. Mark's texts followed, shorter and colder. We counted on you. You can't just walk away. Grow up. Then my parents, leaving voicemails that sounded like legal rulings. Melissa, this is family. You can't just quit your responsibilities. Their voices were stern, clipped, as if I were standing trial. I turned the phone over, face down on the counter, and left it buzzing. Instead, I fill the sink with warm water and wash the dishes by hand. Soap bubbles rose and clung to my wrists, and the steady sound of water against ceramic drowned out the outside world. As my fingers traced the rim of a chipped mug, I felt my breath slow. For the first time in days, I could hear my own rhythm instead of theirs. By evening, Kayla called again. I let it ring twice, then answered. Her voice was low this time, strained but careful, as if rehearsed. We counted on you, Melissa. We invited people because of you. I closed my eyes, leaning against the counter. You didn't count on me. You counted on my silence. And my money. You didn't ask me, Kayla.
You assigned me.
That's not love. She sighed, and for a moment, I thought I heard the edge of tears. We're behind, Melissa. If you stop now, we might miss a payment. Do you want that on your conscience? Do you want the kids to lose their home? My throat tightened, but I didn't let the guilt hook me. Then you and Mark can make a plan, I said firmly. Cut the guest list. Sell the extra car.
Call the bank.
Ask Mom and Dad to host next year. But I am not a bank. I am your sister. Silence stretched between us, thick and brittle. Finally, she muttered something about disappointment, and the line went dead. I stood in my quiet blue house, phone in my hand, heart pounding. The oak tree outside brushed its branches against the glass, as if reminding me that roots matter more than demands. Slowly, I began to walk through each room, touching objects like talismans. This sofa, I whispered. This lamp. This roof. My voice felt steady for the first time in weeks. I grabbed a yellow notepad and wrote out my budget in block letters. Groceries $60, gas $40, savings $300. It wasn't much, not compared to the thousands I had been giving away, but it was mine. For the first time in 2 years, my money was mine. I calculated quickly and realized I had $3,200 left for the month. That number shimmered like air in a desert. I hadn't seen a balance like that in years. In a drawer, I found an envelope I had nearly forgotten about, an old travel stash from a trip I had taken to London 5 years ago. Inside were pounds, pound 400 in neat bills. I smiled, not because of the money itself, but because of what it symbolized. A promise to myself that one day I would travel again, on my own terms, not to rescue or babysit, but to explore. America still held roads I had never driven, cities I had never walked. Europe waited too if I chose. I tucked the envelope back carefully, like planting a seed for the future. That night, I left the window open a crack. The Denver air swept in, thin and sharp, carrying the faint sound of traffic from Colfax Avenue. The oak tree scratched lightly at the glass, steady and familiar. I curled beneath my blanket, listening, and for the first time in years, I felt the start of something clean. It wasn't joy, not yet. It wasn't triumph. It was something quieter, something deeper. The beginning of a life where I wasn't defined by someone else's need. I had lost my ticket, my family's approval, and maybe the fragile peace I had once pretended to have. But I had gained a floor to stand on, solid, mine, and finally steady. As I drifted toward sleep, I thought about the word fall. How sometimes a fall is the end of balance, the breaking of order. But other times, a fall is simply gravity pulling you back to where you belong. And that night, in my little blue house in Denver, I knew I had fallen back to myself. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke before sunrise. The sky over Denver was still gray, soft as wool, and the neighborhood lay in silence except for the occasional rumble of a passing car. I pulled on boots, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and stepped outside. The air bit in my cheeks, sharp and dry, but it felt cleansing, like something new. I got in my car and drove down Colfax Avenue, the streets nearly empty, the traffic lights cycling through colors as though for ghosts. I ended up at a small diner I had always noticed but never entered, a squat building with a flickering neon sign that read open. Inside, the booths were vinyl and cracked, the coffee came strong and endless, and the eggs tasted as though they had been cooked in butter since the dawn of time. A couple from Texas sat at the booth across from me, their voices low as they debated football. A woman in a red scarf read a thick paperback, turning pages slowly. I sat alone, but the solitude didn't press on me the way it once might have. I was not lonely. I was simply with myself. After breakfast, I called my friend Maria in Chicago. Her voice was warm, a reminder that not all relationships take more than they give.
Come visit next month, she said.
We'll walk by the lake and spend nothing but time. No obligations, no strings. I smiled at the thought, scribbling it into my calendar with a small star beside it. For once, my future felt like it belonged to me. Back at home, I set to work on my own version of Thanksgiving. I didn't buy a turkey. A turkey was too large, too symbolic of a feast meant for many mouths. Instead, I roasted a small chicken, seasoning it with rosemary and garlic until the scent filled every corner of my little blue house. I baked an apple pie, my one indulgence, the crust golden and flaky, the filling bubbling sweet beneath the oven's light. The smell was enough to make me close my eyes and smile. My neighbor Grace stopped by around noon, holding a casserole dish of green beans and a grin that stretched wide. "Thought you could use some company," she said. Grace was the kind of neighbor who waved every time she saw me, who left flowers on my porch in summer and shoveled part of my walk in winter. I had never thought to invite her before, but now it seemed obvious. We set the food on my small table, mismatched chairs pulled close, and we ate together, laughing between bites. The house smelled of cinnamon, pepper, and something else, new rules. After we finished, I washed the plates while Grace dried them, and we talked about everything but family. She told me about the book club she had just joined, the one that spent more time drinking wine than discussing novels. I told her about my job in design, the logos that never seemed to please clients, the projects that stretched on for months. The conversation felt light, easy, and it carried no weight of guilt or demand. Later that evening, after Grace left, I sat at my desk with a lamp casting a soft pool of light. I opened my laptop and wrote an email to my family. The words came slowly at first, but then they began to flow. I love you. I won't be your babysitter unless I choose to help. I won't be your lender at all. If you want me at your table, I'll sit as a guest, not the help. If you want my help with money, we can talk about a fair plan in writing, and it will end after 3 months. I won't be shamed for saying no. I am not punishing you. I am protecting myself. When I finished, I read it once, my finger hovering over the send button. A small part of me feared their response, the tidal wave of disapproval I knew would come. But another part of me, steadier now, understood that silence was no longer an option. I pressed send and shut the laptop. The evening settled into quiet. I wrapped the pie in foil, cleaned the last dish, and put on a thick sweater. Then I stepped onto the porch, a mug of tea in my hand. The oak tree loomed dark against the fading sky, its branches brushing the air as if to remind me it had stood through storms far worse than mine. The neighborhood glowed faintly with holiday lights, some neat and symmetrical, others tangled and cheerful. I sipped slowly, letting the steam warm my face. For the first time in a long while, I felt rich. Not in dollars, though I had a few. Not in pounds, though I still kept that quiet envelope tucked away. I was rich in something harder to measure. Space, quiet, the right to speak. I had spent years giving away those riches, as though they were worthless. Now I understood they were everything. I looked at my small house, the uneven porch steps, the peeling white railing, the stubborn front door, and whispered, "Mine." And in the silence that followed, it felt as though the house, kind and stubborn as ever, whispered back, "Yes."